All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Burn City D-backs Talk, hosted by Mike McDermott and Jacob Hardin. So it's been a while since we've been on here. So Jacob, how's the last 3 weeks been treating you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
It's definitely been a wild ride. I'll just say that. So anyway, the biggest story in baseball the last 3 weeks has been the Diamondbacks' hot play. They have not lost a series since June 27th. They're won 9 of their last 10. And they have surged right into the top of the wildcard race, standing, I believe, half a game behind the Braves for the top wildcard spot. They currently occupy the third wildcard spot because, unfortunately, the Padres have gotten equally as hot at the same time. So, what do you think has been the cause of the recent success for the Diamondbacks?
Yeah, Torey Lovullo went on MLB Network today, and he kind of just said the same things he was saying during their postseason run last year. Connected team is a dangerous team, and that's kind of what we've been seeing. They brought in some new guys, whether it be Jock Peterson or now Eduardo Rodriguez getting his first start. And you have these new names who are trying to morph into the lineup, and you haven't really seen them connected. And a big part of that is just because you've had injuries. You've had Geraldo Palermo gone, you've had Alec Thomas gone. You've had a lot of guys who just have not been on the roster consistently. And finally, you're seeing that all morph together, and you're seeing that same Diamondbacks team where it feels like no deficit is too large for them to overcome. They're battling themselves out of some insanely tough situations out of the bullpen, even though they're dealing with still a lot of injuries. You said Bryce Jarvis go down, but overall they're staying connected, and you're seeing Jock Peterson's been huge for them. Ketel Marte is having an MVP caliber season. Corbin Carroll is still kind of floating around, and then Suarez's huge July, one of the best months of his career. Really just, they have the second best offense in baseball, only behind the New York Yankees in runs scored. So the offense is there. It's just been there, more getting together a good game where it's good pitching and good offense, and not, you got to have a little bit of a mix of both. And they're starting to get there. A couple of good starts from Ryan Nelson. Zach Gallen's been doing his thing. Brandon Pfaadt's been staying relatively consistent, and now you're getting some key arms back. So I think, it's all kind of molding together what they envisioned at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, because the way I look at it here, the Diamondbacks offense has, well, now that pretty much their two biggest problems for the first 3 months of the season, with Carroll and Suarez going out to pretty slow, very slow starts. It's like both of them are now starting to turn it up offensively. So now the Diamondbacks really don't have any major lineup holes. And that's why they've been one of the best offenses in the league the last 6 weeks. In fact, if you look at July, and I wrote about it, the Diamondbacks were actually the best offense in July among all 30 teams in batting average, on base, slugging. And if you're into advanced stats and if you go to Fangraphs, Diamondbacks crushed the competition for the best offense in the league with a 134 WRC plus. If you don't, if you want to have a good comparison, the Diamondbacks for the month of July hit like 2024 Jarren Duran All-Star Game MVP. That's how good the offense was in July.
Yeah, and Suarez was right in the middle of that. He entered the month with 6 home runs on the year, tacked on another 8 more, and that was huge. And especially when you had all the speculation of whether he'd be gone at the trade deadline, or whether they would just DFA him, and he shut down any of that. It seemed like he finally got into his groove, and he hasn't really slowed down that much in August. He's still kind of staying around there. So I think that emergence has kind of him getting his swagger back of what he was able to do for the Mariners or the Reds, and bringing that offensive output to the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, his entire month of July was so good. It basically got his numbers back up to where everyone kind of expected it would be.
Yeah. You kind of expect him to be hitting around 220, 230, maybe striking out, 1 or 2 times a game. But if he brings you those 30 home runs, that's kind of what you're asking for him.
Yeah, I don't think he'll get you 30, but
yeah, no,
25 isn't necessarily out of reach because he's at 16. Yeah. And we know what a hot month. If he gets another hot month, he might break 25. I mean, for the most part, even though the first 3 months were pretty bad, you look at the end of the thing, it's like, okay, everything's back to normal. And and despite all those struggles, the defense has been very solid all year. Like if you look at what third baseman you want to look at to try and like teach tape defensively how you play the position, you take Eugenio Suarez's tape at third base, basically. That's what you want to teach. Because he's not necessarily the most rangy third baseman. I don't think necessarily he's a excellent off-platform thrower, but his fundamentals are so solid. He takes great angles to the ball. He doesn't have any wasted movement. Now, occasionally bobble ball, but that's everyone does that. There's not a lot of wasted movement in his defense, so everything comes out on time. And he's still got an above-average arm, too. The arm still very much plays at the position. So that's pretty much where he said with it. Now that Suarez went from the guy in the lineup that everyone was frustrated is in the lineup to it's like, okay, here we go. And then the same is also true for Carroll. I feel like now the Diamondbacks can just focus on addressing their... I think the thing they need to address is figuring, okay, how do they fix the closer role? I feel like that's going to be something they need to figure out in the next 2 months. Figure that out, and I think if they can figure that out, I think a deep postseason run definitely is in the cards again.
Yeah, and like Torrevilla mentioned, it's going to come down to playing the matchups. So I was surprised, particularly last night, he didn't have AJ Puck come out there to face the first batter in the ninth. We had a lefty on lefty, and how Puck fares against lefty is much better than Ryan Thompson. I know they're sending Thompson out there for the roles. I think that's 3 in a row where they've done so. How would you feel? I know this Justin Martinez in that closer position.
I feel like the problem with Martinez is more so here. It's not necessarily a thing where he's a head case or the mentality isn't going to be there. It's just, I think in those big situations, the game is a little bit too fast for him. Or he's a little over anxious. And you saw before that he threw his first pitch, the entire infield came to the mound for a mound visit to try and make sure he wasn't airmailing pitches or spiking them. When you see Martinez do that, that's when you know something's off. And for the most part, it's like give Geraldo Perotto credit. He knows when it's time to go visit the mound, especially with Martinez. We saw it twice on this road trip where the timely mound visits ended up rescuing his outing. And it was especially true for the Reynolds at bat in Pittsburgh, where he spiked 5 straight pitches after getting thrown off his rhythm by a Pirates challenge. It ended up leading to a walk, but then after the mound visit, he threw probably the 3 nastiest pitches of his season right afterwards.
Yeah, that was some of the most emotion I've ever seen him show all season after he closed out the win against the Guardians. So you can kind of see his confidence growing out there, but is he quite there yet? I'll say they do put him in the closer position, and then he walks 3 to start off an inning, and all of a sudden, it's predictable that it could happen, but he's exciting to watch, and I think that's why a lot of people want to see him there.
Yeah, I think the earliest you'll see him as the full-time closer is probably opening day next season. I still feel like there's still, like I said, the thing the D-backs have to guard against is Martinez just overthrowing, which we all know is a bad idea and he doesn't need to do because there aren't very many pitchers in the league that can throw 102 with sink.
Yeah.
And then the type of secondary stuff that he has, both the slider and the splitter are swing and miss because he throws 100. Of course, the splitter by itself is already a nasty pitch in its own right, but the slider plays up because of his fastball velocity. So, he has a legit 3-pitch mix that can get missed in my opinion, missed bats. So it's just a matter of just trying to get him dialed in, locked down, so they don't necessarily have to hold his hand every time he's in a big situation. That's the next step, in my opinion. He gets past that hurdle, he's legit closer.
Yeah,
in my opinion. And it's not a question of if. I've seen Martinez before. He kind of broke out, and it's like I don't think he ever gets particularly. He's not afraid of any situation, but I do think he'll get a little over anxious. That's about it. I think if Martinez were to figure out the closer role by the end of the season, that would be like the perfect scenario for the Diamondbacks because they don't necessarily want to put Puck in as the closer because then that kind of removes the point of trading for him in the first place, in my opinion. It's like to use him whenever you need to. Of course, I think they should have used him in the 9th inning because you didn't necessarily have any right-handed batters that necessarily gave you cause for concern, but you would have the left on left with Steven Kwan, who's the second best hitter on that team after Ramirez, but it worked out, and I feel like Thompson would have picked up the save if not for that misplay in the outfield. Right.
Yeah, and like you said, last year with Paul Sewald, that was a deciding factor on what allowed them to really go deep in the postseason. So if they were to have Justin Martinez lock down that closer role, I don't see what would stop them from making a deep postseason run, because it seems like that's what's standing in the way right now. Unless the offense just went completely cold, it's whether they can close out that game in the 8th and 9th inning. And right now there is no definitive answer on that.
Yeah, I feel like that's their biggest need. I think you can get away with a somewhat compromised rotation because you're going to be going to the bullpen in the 5th and 6th inning most of the time in the postseason. Although the Diamondbacks do have to guard against burning out their relievers, but at the same time, it's like you can't worry about the next series per se. But I do think the Diamondbacks bullpen burnt out by the time they got to the World Series. But you'll take a burnt out bullpen in the World Series versus a first round exit.
Yeah.
Any year. But I do think they're in better position to not burn out their bullpen than they were a year ago. They had like 4 usable guys. Now they have 7.
They had Andrew Sullivan going in there on 10 innings of major league experience. And he did pitch outstandingly well. I had to get bailed out by Ginkgo a couple of times, but for the most part, he held his ground.
Yeah, that was the surprise pitcher for the Diamondbacks in that postseason run. So This is actually a point that Lindsey Crosby told me when he and I talked about the AJ Puck trade last week, a couple weeks ago. But who, in your opinion, would be the 3 key starters, the 3 key bats, and the 3 key relievers for the Diamondbacks to make a postseason run? So we'll start with the rotation. And I'll start with my 3. So obviously Zach Gallen and Brandon Pfaadt have to be 2 of them. The question is, who's your 3rd?
Eduardo Rodriguez.
So you're going to say Eduardo Rodriguez. Yeah, I'm going to say a healthy Merrill Kelly, I think, is going to be a better option than Rodriguez, but we don't know with either of the two. If Nelson ends up being that guy, that's fine, but I don't know if Nelson's even going to start.
I'm naming Rodriguez over Kelly because I still have a lot of faith in Kelly that he'll come back and be close to the same player he was in April or last year. I think with Rodriguez, you have absolutely no idea what you're going to get from him. He hasn't stepped on a mound since October 1st of last year.
The last time he was on the mound was March 19th.
In a game situation, in a regular season game. But so you have no idea. And he was iffy a little bit with the Tigers towards the end of the year. He had, he was still putting up good numbers, but I think Kelly is more of a certainty of I think you're still going to get 5-6 innings out of him on this any day. With Rodriguez, we have no idea. It could be a Jordan Montgomery situation where all of a sudden you're faced with not knowing what to do because he can't get you a quality start, once every 4 starts.
Yeah, and I will say this about Kelly. I think Kelly's shoulder injury is worse than Rodriguez's shoulder injury because Rodriguez is more towards the back. The lat area, whereas Merrill Kelly's is rotator cuff. Anytime you have a pitcher that has a rotator cuff injury, you have to hold your breath if they're ever going to be the same again.
That is true.
We saw, of course, we also saw last year, we have extreme examples of both injuries. When you had Corbin Martin in 23, he tore the lat tendon throwing a pitch, and it was a pretty ugly scene. I remember watching that in person. And then Melanson ended up straining a muscle in his rotator cuff, and he has not thrown a pitch in his life since. I think he threw one rehab appearance and they shut him down. But that's kind of just the tricky nature of each of those injuries. I don't think they're as severe as the 2 injuries I described, but I think Rodriguez is a key point because I feel like he's more likely to be closer. I feel like he's more likely to be closer to full strength coming off his injury than Merrill Kelly, but we won't know until both guys are on the mound and have a few starts under their belt. But I think it's going to be important for Nelson to step up in the final 2 months of the season. I think they have to keep him in the rotation. Even though his last start was kind of a little shaky early, but he locked in.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I see where the rotation is. So since the Diamondbacks are still being affected by injuries, what do you think of the both the Walker and the Moreno injury situation?
I would say they definitely got lucky with the Christian Walker situation. At that point of where they were at the trade deadline, there weren't any, I think, I think Josh Bell was literally the perfect fit for what they needed. And it was, extremely lucky that the Marlins happened to place him on waivers a couple days prior. And the fact that he didn't get picked up kind of surprised me. There were a couple teams who I thought would make a move on him. He was, into when he was getting optioned, placed on waivers, he was putting out some insane numbers. He had, 4 home runs over the last 6 games. He was riding a hitting streak. So he was hitting the crap out of the ball. And, it's just the Marlins unloading their roster. So I think the fact that the Diamondbacks were able to get him for right now, I haven't noticed that big of a difference. Bell hasn't had a home run since his debut with the Diamondbacks, but nevertheless, I think he's filled that spot exceptionally. Now, when it comes to playoffs, yeah, you need Christian Walker's glove out there. That is that's a Gold Glove first baseman that is tough to miss it's tough to replace in the infield, and of course, Josh Bell doesn't offer that same quality glove. And moving on to Moreno, I think it's going to be particularly tough tonight because you have Eduardo Rodriguez making his first start, and so you would like to see a catcher with a lot of major league experience out there, and while Gabriel Moreno is still, fairly young, he's been able to prove that he can handle major league pitching and navigate, a lot of young arms in the Diamondbacks rotation. So I think that I'll say veteran experience out there would definitely be useful. I assume they're going, are they going Jose Herrera tonight, or are they going Del Castillo?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lineup yet. I think Herrera would be the obvious safe choice in my opinion, but you're not calling up Del Castillo to not start.
Yeah.
To not essentially assume Moreno's workload behind the plate. Mm-hmm. Like, Herrera's not a guy you can bump up more than a 50, maybe a 60-40 split because his bat's not that good.
Yeah, and the tough part with Moreno, the groin injury, that can last for a little bit longer than you think. So that
same
can
is also
linger.
True for Walker.
Yes, yeah. Any of the tightness, soreness, strains, that's always going to start on the 10-day IL. So, and we've seen it with the Diamondbacks all year long. It starts with a little bit of something, and then it slowly progresses. So, Gabriel Moreno is going to be a must need for the playoffs. You need that experience back there. I don't trust Jose Herrera back there. I think they did a couple games in the postseason last year when Moreno exited early, but with how their bullpen is setting up, the only guy I trust to navigate that is Moreno. So I think out of the two, Moreno is the biggest need to get back just because they were able to get Josh Bell. So I think that bat at least is able to replace it. But when it comes to behind the plate, they're going to need Moreno back come postseason.
Yeah, and I also believe that this is also true, but having Moreno behind plate, he discourages teams from trying to steal. Jose Herrera is a solid throwing catcher, but he's not a guy who impacts the game, who literally discourages teams from stealing, although it would help if his pitchers would pay attention looking at you, Zach Gallen. Don't worry, you won't watch this, but...
yeah, I agree.
Herrera's a guy who will throw... Herrera's above average when it comes to getting the ball down to second base, so... He's not a poor defender by any stretch of the imagination, but you don't want to expose his bat too much, whereas Del Castillo's kind of the polar opposite of Herrera, where Del Castillo's bat plays at the major league level, in my opinion, but you're going to be able to run on him because he has a pretty poor arm, but he's fairly athletic, and I think he has... I'll have to take a look, but I think he can compensate for a below average arm with good footwork and a good release. Just take some point. Just watch some Moreno film. Like, Moreno has a textbook throw down to second base that's teachable to everybody, so you can break that down for him. But he's always going to be a guy that the bat is going to be the carrying tool. Now, fortunately, in the age of PitchCom, and eventually we're going to have the challenge system in place, so he's a big fan of that. Framing and pitch calling will be less important for a catcher, in my opinion, although I do think the game calling aspect is the most important part of the job. Handling a pitcher is going to be the most important job for a catcher because, again, the object is to make sure your opponents don't score enough runs at your offense. Can't compensate, and of course, in the Diamondbacks situation, their offense pretty much has compensated for a lot of miscues this season. So that's kind of just where I stand with the catcher position. Like, it's like we're going to be disappointed when we see Del Castillo behind the plate, but that's because we're used to seeing Gold Glove level defense behind the plate 65% of the time.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting.
Same with Josh Bell first.
I feel like there's a much bigger drop off from Moreno to the average guy versus Christian Walker to the average guy, even though we know Walker's the best defensive first baseman in the league by a lot. That's pretty much where it had. Do you have any other ideas you wanted to talk about? I think you mentioned a couple more. Oh yeah,
I wrote
the Marte MVP case. Yeah, I feel like that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Like Ketel Marte, you can argue maybe not the front runner, but he's right there.
No, I was just comparing them on StatHead. You have three guys. You have Francisco Lindor.
Lindor's not in the race.
On DraftKings, yeah.
They're probably trying to get you to bet on Ketel Marte.
That's when I looked at it. So I compared the three. So those are the three guys. I think Ketel Marte was like plus 1,400. Shohei Ohtani is at minus 1,200. And of course, I mean, even over Harper, Marte leads in every single statistical category besides, I think it was, on base percentage. And then with Lindor, he leads in every category besides stolen bases. And even with Ohtani, he's right there. When you consider Marte's glove at second base compared to Ohtani, who's at the DH spot, I think he has a little bit even an advantage. Well, the odds don't show that, and it's not going to come down to that when you give in Ohtani's popularity and then Marte's popularity. But in 26 more plate appearances than Marte, Ohtani has just 6 more hits, 6 more home runs, 2 more RBIs, a .06 higher batting average, and a 28 points higher OPS plus. So it's close. And when you look at the stats, it's very close. They're right there neck and neck in almost every single statistical category. Of course, Ohtani is the only one with the higher WAR than Marte in all of baseball. And you still have a month. So there still is time. And he's getting hotter as the season progresses. His batting average is back above 300 for the first time since early May. And he's hit, I think it's 6 home runs over the past 2 weeks. And I think all it would take is another good month of Marte, and he's going to be leading Ohtani in almost every category.
I mean, because the thing that's going to hurt Ketel Marte is Shohei Ohtani gets a 40-40 season, so 40 homers, 40 steals.
Yes. Yeah.
It's going to be tough for Marte to overcome that narrative. Now, of course, if the Diamondbacks make the postseason, especially by some miracle, they actually beat the Dodgers for the division. And I do think Ohtani wouldn't get unanimous MVP even if he were to win, because I wouldn't be surprised if there are some voters that will simply not vote for a DH. Now, if Ohtani were pitching this, we wouldn't even be talking about this, but I'll have to take the averages. I was going to say, Francisco Lindor is one of those guys that's numbers don't pop up, but because he plays in such a pitcher's ballpark and he's putting up good numbers anyway, his rate stats are pretty high as well. And he's a guy whose defense, I think, gets a little underappreciated by the Gold Glove voting a bit. I'm not sure if he'll win another one this year. But he has a decent case, but I think Ketel Marte has a better case than Lindor because of the superior bat.
Yeah, I don't see how anybody would have a better case than Ohtani than Marte. And, I do think Ohtani will likely win it. But I think Marte, the fact that you don't really hear his name pop up in that is a shame, because, it was difficult enough for him to get into the All-Star game. And it shouldn't have been a close race, but, there we were.
Yeah, you can thank the Padres for stuffing the ballot on that one.
Yeah. He gets a lot of hits.
Yeah. But he's only valuable when you need a single. Ketel Marte's hitting jacks.
Yeah. A bit different.
I'm not sure what Luis Ariza's home run count is for his career, but I think Marte is going to pass that this year. Is a joke. But yeah, but when you look at the package, obviously Marte is probably the second best hitter in the MVP race, in my opinion, just edging out Lindor. And I'll take the averages. So Lindor, I think, is the third place. De La Cruz is ahead of both Lindor and Marte in F4, which uses StatCast outs above average and runs prevented metric for their defense, as opposed to Baseball Reference, which uses defensive runs saved. as part of the calculation. But I feel like it's I felt like for most of the season, I think this is a 2-horse race for the MVP. So I've been thinking that since May between Ohtani and Ketel Marte, but we'll see what happens on that one. You have any more things to add? I'm right now. I'm taking the averages of the two wars.
No, I know. I think you nailed it. I think it's a 2-player race right now, and I think Ohtani did win the MVP as a DH before, but like you said, Marte has that glove at second base that could give him a slight advantage. Now, will the voters see that? Maybe, maybe not.
All right, so taking the averages of Fangraphs and Baseball Reference, so Ohtani is at the top at 6 average WAR, so 6. The average is 6. Coming in second place is Ketel Marte at 5.5, and he's the only other player with at least 5 on both sites as well. Then you got Francisco Lindor just under 5 at 4.95, and then Ellie De La Cruz at 4.7. Those are your top 4 MVP guys. So you can pretty much take to the bank that Ketel Marte is going to be an MVP finalist, but I think for Marte to get to win the actual MVP award, he's going to probably have to hit. He's going to have to hit 30 homers. He's going to have to be a Gold Glove finalist. He's going to win the Silver Slugger award at his position because it's not even a race. The next most valuable second baseman in the National League is a glove first second baseman in Terang, whose job is literally get on base and run fast offensively.
Yeah, and like you said about the Diamondbacks inching up, and they're only 5 games back from the Dodgers. And I'm looking at the Dodgers schedule. They got the Phillies. Their next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 series are against teams with better records over 500. They got the Phillies, Pirates, Brewers, Cardinals, Mariners, Rays, and then Orioles and Diamondbacks to start September.
I mean, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Arizona, I think, are the 3 toughest teams on that schedule. I think Milwaukee is interesting, but
Cardinals, Rays, and then Seattle are all just kind of your Mariners have the AL West. But
yeah, if the Diamondbacks have any chance of taking the National League West, they have to win 3 or 4 on Labor Day weekend. 3, no fewer than 3 games.
Yeah, no,
that's 2 games you pick up right there.
And that's the tiebreaker right there too. I want to believe that they're tied with the Dodgers this year when it comes to head-to-head.
Just splitting the series would guarantee a season tiebreaker.
Yeah,
winning 3 of 4 because you need to it's more important to make up ground, and if you get the season tiebreaker is just a bonus.
I guess Dodgers end the year though. On the other side, you have Marlins, Rockies, Padres, Rockies. So you have 3, 6, 9 of your last 12 games are against the worst teams in the National League, but it is closer. They were 11 games, 11 or more games behind, a couple months ago. So, and the Dodgers, there's so many injuries that they're facing right now. So,
and for them, it's not sure if guys are coming back. It's not like the Diamondbacks where it's like, okay, guys are coming back.
Yeah.
Christian Walker will be back. Moreno, not sure, but more likely than not to come back.
Yeah, and the guys that are coming,
it's like
Kershaw,
Erod's coming back today. Coming back. Kelly is a start behind him. I think Kelly's throwing for Hillsborough.
Yeah, I saw that he's supposed to start tonight.
So this is August 6th at the time of recording. But anyways, any final wrap-up thoughts? You want to address anything before we go?
I don't believe so. I think we covered everything that we wanted to.
Yeah. So anyways, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the Burn City Sports YouTube channel. Make sure to follow the Burn City Sports account on X at Burn City D-backs. That's where we post. It's where we tweet out game highlights, and I'll usually on my main account, which you can see on the top left there, Mike McD MLB, and I'll usually just add like a little bit of insight to each video into there, increase some visibility. But that's pretty much the accounts that you want to follow. Like I said, it's on the spelling is right there on the overlay that we have, but that's pretty much it. So anyways, thanks for watching.